We got two blue bloods who might both be underrated, and we're going to learn a lot about both. Can Kansas take down North Carolina? Can North Carolina enact a little bit of revenge for last year? And I guess we don't need to bring up some of the other ones as well. This is Locked On Crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson with Isaac Schade here on Locked On Crossover. We've got Locked On Jayhawks, Locked On Tar Heels, and it is a awesome blue blood matchup on Friday with Kansas and North Carolina coming up on Friday at 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern time. You can give Isaac a follow at Isaac Schade. You can give me a follow at D Johnson Radio on Twitter. And on today's edition, we are breaking down the Kansas-North Carolina game. We're going to get into some of the top, stories and things that we're feeling about these teams coming into this game. We're getting into players to watch who could certainly determine this game, and then we'll get to what it's going to take for either of these schools to come down with the victory on today's show. And this episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today with FanDuel. So, Isaac, thanks for hopping on here. And I think anytime you get any of the blue bloods going up against each other, like it is appointment television, and it's just a fun matchup. I don't know, getting these early season matchups where we can drum up interest in college basketball. Isaac also does Locked On College Basketball. It's just, I think, a good thing overall for the sport. But I think this one's really fun to me because I do think both of these teams are in a similar spot where, maybe underachieved a little last year to where you were expected to be. And now you go into this year kind of thinking both could be underrated. And I think whoever wins this game, that's going to be kind of the national takeaway. Like, this is the team that, maybe they should be rated a little higher than where they are.
That's so good, Derek. Great point. And it's funny because championship game down in New Orleans, right? And now we get back to where, as you said, I both teams, I think because of last year, I think are being severely underrated. Both Kansas and Carolina, I think, are severely underrated in the preseason. And unfortunately, as you so well just said it, I think whoever is the winner here is probably going to get unfairly overpraised, and whoever is the loser is going to get unfairly slandered. And I don't think that's the case, right? What I'm hoping for is a just high level basketball game between.
We actually got last year.
Good last year in Allen Fieldhouse, dude. Came down to that Elliot Cadeau shot for a game tying three at the buzzer, missed. I mean, it was so good. I'm looking for almost a repeat of that 92-89. Obviously, Carolina fans would love to see it in the other order of the score, but I think our two fan bases can hopefully rationally walk away from this. But Derek, I know on the Carolina side of things, I was talking about this on my other Thursday show, is Carolina kind of has four swing games in non-con play. This one at Kentucky, Michigan State in the Fort Myers Invitational, and Ohio State in the CBS Sports Classic. And you feel like you really need to go at least 3-1, at worst 2-2 in those games. And I think for Carolina, it's especially because of losing last year, as you were saying, enacting a measure of revenge, I think winning this game goes a long way to maybe rid some of the demons of last year, but also to take some of the pressure off of those other three games. But the problem is, I'm sure Kansas fans probably feel some of the same dilemma.
Yeah, I mean, UConn in the non-con, at NC State, Duke in the non-con players era, Missouri in the non, it's very much a similar situation with what you're looking at there. And I do think, from the Kansas perspective, it's very much a game where you're going on the road. You already won at Louisville in an exhibition game. It's an exhibition, but it's this idea of feeling like you're back if you win the game. And it doesn't guarantee it because, last year it felt like Kansas was back when they beat Duke in Vegas, and that didn't work out. And they beat Michigan State in the Champions Classic, who ended up having a much better season than Kansas ended up having. But it just, with the newness on both rosters too, yes. I think that's part of it that makes it feel like a bit of a validation. That is one difference, I think, from this year compared to last year, right? When you look at last year's teams, And actually, like, it being a close game actually kind of made sense in the end. Kansas being a 7 seed, Carolina being 11. I can't help but wonder, like, if Carolina wins that game, like, they're certainly not in the first 4. Is Carolina like a 9 seed or a 10 seed? And is Kansas on that 8? Who knows? Maybe we would have got a rematch in the NCAA tournament. But this year, as opposed to having Hunter Dickinson and KJ Adams and DeJuan Harris back as veterans, but have maybe kind of plateaued, and having RJ Davis and, Jalen Withers and all these guys back for North Carolina, it's like, okay, well, Seth Trimble's back, and okay, Marco Jackson's back, but it's like, it is a bunch of new players. And I think that's why this one, to me, feels like a bigger deal than last year, just from the standpoint of it is a bit more validation because there are a lot more unknowns at this point on both rosters.
That's so true. And the good news too is, I think a lot of people, I know you and I texted about it this offseason when Bill Self had another episode, is I was like, dadgummit, I hope Bill Self's okay. We can't lose an American treasure out of more coaches leaving early. But it seems like he is, hearing him talk about it at Big 12 Media Days, sounds like he is in better shape than ever, feeling great. Medical professionals are saying he feels great. And so that is the good side of it too, is you get, just one of the best ever to do it as part of this. And that's great. You mentioned earlier, and I forgot to follow up on, this is clearly the highlight of Friday night's NCAA basketball. We got some other great basketball on Saturday. There's some other high level games as well. But yes, Derek, especially now that we don't have Champions Classic, like tipping off the season as it used to do. We're still a week or two away from that. It's great to get a bunch of high level games here on week 1. We had Arizona, Florida to open the season. My goodness, Arizona looked good. And so I love that our two programs, as stressful as it is for this to be game 2, I love that these two blue blood programs who can both trace, obviously more directly with Kansas, James Naismith roots, like, it's just good for college basketball, and I couldn't be more excited for it.
Yeah, and Bill Self mentioned at a press conference this week that he would love to continue this home and home, and I think that makes so much sense when you look at it, like, just the ties between these two programs, with Dean Smith playing at Kansas, coming to North Carolina, Roy Williams from Kansas to North Carolina, where was his alma mater. Kansas fans love floating the Michael Jordan picture where he's at a KU camp for Roy Williams wearing a Jayhawk jersey. Right. It's just there's so many, like, kind of fun ties between the two. Now, one fun tie in this game is going to be, years from now, we'll look back when they're both having lengthy NBA careers and going, that was a fun college matchup. At least you'd certainly think. We've made it too far into this episode without mentioning Darryn Peterson against Caleb Wilson. And I don't know how often they'll actually match up on each other. I think it's probably, in my eyes, like a little more likely Wilson matches up on a possession or two on Peterson, because Wilson's obviously known as that, like, potential to be this freak defender. So maybe he switches on to him. Plus, Carolina's playing bigger. With Kansas, they're not playing as big of lineups, so I feel like it's less likely that he slides. But Kansas switches, so there probably will be some possessions where they're matched up. But either way, it's two super, super exciting freshmen. What have you seen so far that's made Caleb Wilson so good through the exhibition season and the season opener?
You're absolutely right, Derek. This is going to be a phenomenal matchup between two of the very best who have already shown that capability both in the exhibition season and in their first games this week. With Caleb Wilson, the thing that he has proven already is, you kind of alluded to it there, but being such a strong two-way player, right? A lot of times when we think about elite 5-star freshmen, the automatic thought people just go to is, oh man, that dude must be a walking bucket. And Caleb can score. But that is not his sole calling card. In each of Carolina's exhibition games, he had a double-double. In their opening night game, very efficient, 8 of 10 from the field, but has a couple blocks, does things athletically on the defensive end of the court. And as somebody, a lot of people say they want to be defenders, Derek, but a lot of people, when the rubber meets the road, it was some nice things to say, and then they're like, all right, go have a bucket. I'll get it on the net. Like, he's locked in on the defensive end of the floor. And that is what I've seen that's so impressed me. Yes, the scoring, he's had 20 points every time he's put on a Carolina jersey so far in the 2 exhibitions and in their game on Monday night of this week. But that also, man, he's so locked in defensively. And that's the thing that kind of sets him apart. And I'll also say, he's got this gregarious personality where this is Seth Trimble's team. You talked about him being back. He's the senior. But there's something about Caleb Wilson's just infectious personality off the floor that makes people want to come around him and be part of the Caleb Wilson experience. And I think that's it as well. He's fun off the court and he's a killer on it, and that makes it so fun. What about Darryn Peterson? What is setting him apart there in Lawrence, Kansas?
He's just so polished, so poised, and it's crazy because, like, he's had to deal with some cramping stuff. So that is something that I'm watching into this game. Like, if that causes him to miss time, that could be a huge boon for Carolina in this one, because KU isn't as star-studded around Darryn Peterson as maybe we've seen some KU rosters in past years. But sure, it's just the footwork, the ability to rise over guys and hit contested shots, the three-point shooting, the passing ability, the seamless athleticism. He's just everything that I could imagine. Honestly, like, watching him has reminded me a lot of, like, watching kind of like Tracy McGrady a little bit. Like, I see a little bit of that in there. He's just a really smooth player, really, really fun to watch. So I'm really looking forward to these two guys. It would not surprise me if either one goes for 25, 30 points in this one. But there's other players that are going to play a big impact in this one. So let's get to that on the other side here on Locked On Jayhawks, Locked On Tar Heels crossover. This episode of the show is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your new crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times are going to keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Their Trademaster perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make the whole process just that much smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service with Supply House. So with Isaac Schade, I'm Derek Johnson, and you can check out Isaac Locked On Tar Heels, also Locked On College Basketball. Derek Johnson here with Locked On Jayhawks. So, the freshmen are going to be the big names, the headline players, and that is deservedly so, the guys we want to see. But there's a lot of other interesting players in this one. Certainly for me, when I look at North Carolina, Henry Veesar, who was at Arizona last year, and we got to see against Kansas twice. One of the games really struggled. He only had 5 points. But in the second meeting with Kansas in the Big 12 tournament, he killed Kansas, 19 points. He's certainly somebody I'm keeping an eye on in that matchup with Flory Bidunga. Who's somebody that you kind of have your eyes on the spotlight in this one for Carolina to try to perform well, and if they're going to pull off this victory, or I think Ken Palm has them as a 2-point favorite, they're going to need that player to play well. Great question. I think maybe the most intriguing as well, Derek, is I don't know how much Kansas fans have been tracking this, but for Carolina, it's been the only storyline basically all summer that everyone's freaked out about. And that is the player from Montenegro named Luka Bogavac. This young man has been playing for multiple years professionally over in Montenegro and committed to Carolina back earlier in the summer. And it was delayed because of just all the red tape of getting a visa and getting to America. Once he did get here, then it's like, okay, now we got to get NCAA clearance. A couple weeks ago that happened, and that had been reported to be the last hurdle, as often is the case, right? Like, you're NCAA cleared, boom, you're good to go. Well, the day he was cleared by the NCAA, it was like, oh, actually, he's not fully cleared on the Carolina side of things at a university like academics level yet. And so that had been like, everyone is stressing about that. Literally 30 minutes before Carolina tipped off on Monday night in their season opener, it was announced that he was cleared and eligible and ready to go and would play on Monday night. Long term, he's going to be Carolina's starting 3. Obviously, made sense. He came off the bench in that game, but he was the first one off the bench. I think he's somebody that I'm very curious to see how he does in this game. My expectation is that he will still come off the bench, at least for this one. And then Carolina has 3 bye games before their MTE. So I think he starts after this game. But I think who do you think he starts for? if you don't
Darryn
mind.
Stevenson. I think Carolina has been in their exhibitions and on Monday night. They went jumbo 6'10", 6'10", 7 foot with Darryn Stevenson, Caleb Wilson, and Henry Veesar, who you mentioned. And so Bogavac, I expect to be at the 3. This dude is a 40% three-point shooter. He's grizzled veteran. There's another guy named Luka that's really good at basketball who you look at him and it's like, how are you beating me right now? Luka Bogavac is kind of the same way. He's not uber athlete, but he's 6'5". He can knock it down. He can get into the lane. He can distribute. He's not going to turn it over a ton. And so I'm really curious to see how that experience plays in this game for somebody that hadn't got to play yet until Monday night. Derek, what about you on the KU side of things?
Well, you bring up the jumbo lineup, and that's where I'm very, very, I guess, interested in this because, what is his role going to be in terms of eating into that jumbo lineup? Because KU's not an overly big team.
Right,
Kansas literally has 3 bigs on the roster. That is it. It's Flory Bidunga, who at times has gotten into foul trouble. It's Paul Mbia, who was one of the international players that came over as well, and he's got a 7'9" wingspan. Dude's gigantic, but he's a little raw. Yeah. And then you have Bryson Tiller, who Bryson Tiller was a former, top 20, 25 recruit, reclassifies up, ends up, joining the team last year, but he hasn't played until this year, a competitive basketball game in like a year and a half because of an injury. Now he's back and he's looked really good in the early part of the season for KU. And we've seen a little bit here and there. So we've seen some Tiller at the 5 as the backup to Flory. Right. We've seen some other lineups where it has been Tiller at the 4 next to Flory at the 5. And that can work because Tiller actually, like we saw Tiller hit a corner 3 last game. He's a very mobile big. If you go back, there's a fun highlight in the Louisville game on the road where he gets it in the corner and attacks a closeout and throws down a dunk off the dribble.
Yes.
So very skilled big man in Bryson Tiller. And to me, he's kind of the player I'm most interested in. And it's funny because we're both talking about a guy you mentioned with Bogavac, I don't know, maybe he plays, if he's coming off the bench, 15 minutes, 20 minutes as he's trying to, get ingrained with things. With Bryson Tiller, he might play 10, 15, 20 minutes. But I just think he is KU's best solution if North Carolina goes to the jumbo lineup, because it's a situation right now where Trey White, who's 6'7", is playing the 4. Flory's obviously big enough, only 6'8", but he's got 7'2" wingspan. So, he's fine at the 5. And then it's you're playing guards like Melvin Council, who's 6'3", Marco Jackson, who's 6'3", Jaden Dawson's 6'4", Cole Rosario's 6'4". If they're going with the jumbo lineup, I'm just who's guarding, 6'10" Caleb Wilson is the 3, exactly, or Darryn Stevenson at the 6'10" at the 4. And so that's where I think Tiller comes into play. I do think you could see even some 2 big lineup where Paul Mbia is at the 5 with Flory at the 4 if they go to that jumbo lineup. But that's why Tiller to me becomes interesting, because he is your most mobile and kind of versatile big and will unlock KU playing in that way. And I think he needs to have a big game, because if Carolina goes to that, he is kind of their only solution they have in that regard.
And it's funny you go to the front court, Derek, because when I talk about things and have thought about it this week, it is the Flory Bidunga factor that worries me the most. Obviously, Darryn Peterson, super concerned about that. How do you guard him? Who do you put on him? Because it's either going to be a Seth Trimble who's giving up some inches, or a Darryn Stevenson who's giving up some athleticism. But with Flory, like you look at Carolina's jumbo lineup, and yes, there's the height, but they don't have the heft or the girth of a Flory Bidunga or a Bryson Tiller for that matter, or a Paul Mbia. Each of those guys is more well-built than Henry Veesar at 225, or Caleb Wilson and Darryn Stevenson both at 215, right? And so I think even though Kansas gives up a little height, my concern is the Jayhawks' ability to push Carolina around in the front court. And so my big take on it is this is a massive test for Henry Veesar. How can he match up with Flory Bidunga? And I got to be honest, I think whoever is able to get the better of that matchup might be the one that puts their team in position to win this game.
So is that how North Carolina wins, or is that how Kansas wins? We're getting to that next. This is Locked On Crossover. And today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. College basketball is back. You'll be able to get action on the KU North Carolina game. Like I said earlier, Ken Palm had it around 2 points. Usually it's close to that over at FanDuel. There's also the NBA back. NHL's going on right now. College football, NFL. Why would you want to miss the action right now? You can ride the hot hand. You can bet once the game gets going. There's live bets, everything all the way to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com. You can build your parlay for this game with, Darryn Peterson to score 15 plus points and Flory Bidunga and Henry Veesar to get, 8+ rebounds or whatever it ends up being with some of the different lines when they come out. So FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us on this Locked On crossover, Locked On Tar Heels with Isaac Schade. I'm Derek Johnson with Locked On Jayhawks. So you kind of alluded to that center matchup being a very pivotal one between these two teams. So is that your answer? North Carolina wins this game if blank happens?
I think that is certainly part of it, Derek. In terms of getting the better of that matchup, I think is critical for both teams getting an advantage. But Carolina, to me, wins this game if they're able to keep it out of being an overly half-court game. One of the things that's true is that Kyan Evans, who comes over from Colorado State, was a great running mate with Neek Clifford last year. Folks, if you didn't get to see that Colorado State team in action, you missed out. They were so fun. And it was when Kyan Evans was
Kansas City kid too.
Kansas City kid. That's exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. Which, I'm here close as well. I live just 2 hours south of Kansas City. So I remember him from high school. So I was super elated when he came to Carolina. But it was when Nico Medved, who's, now in the Big Ten, inserted him into the starting lineup that Colorado State took off. This dude went like it's unheralded, but let me just read you his line from Carolina's opening game. 15 points on 5 of 8 shooting, 4 of 7 from the field, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals. Derek Johnson, that's your lead guard leading out the way. What he's not always been is a traditional point guard. And so what Seth Trimble, what Luka Bogavac need to be able to do is get that out in transition and run. Carolina scored 26 fast break points in their opening night game the other day. And it's because the defense was feeding that offense. They're able to get out and go. And so that's what I'm watching for which would make this a super fun game, is getting up and down, a lot of that. And then being able to, because it's not Elliot Cadeau as you're able to lock in, and Carolina's going to function through him sharing the ball and RJ Davis scoring. Carolina had 23 assists on 33 made baskets the other night, which is one of the highest ever assist percentages in the Hubert Davis era. That's what I love to see, man, is the ball moving around and not sticking, everybody being willing to share. So Carolina's ability for Kyan Evans to be that dynamic lead guard, but everybody to take their role in sharing it in that way, I think is what really helps Carolina if they're able to win this game.
And that transition play is super interesting to me because, if Kansas does end up being undersized against the jumbo lineup, it's you would think the counter is to win with speed, but then you think of North Carolina, whether it was with Roy or with Hubert or whoever, playing super fast. And it's are you playing into their hands if you do that? So that is certainly interesting to hear that. And, from my perspective, I think Kansas wins this game if they are able to check Kyan Evans and Seth Trimble, the two kind of main backcourt guys, because I'll be super interested, first of all, to see who guards who for Kansas. Melvin Council is their, I would say, best perimeter defender from a guard perspective. Do you put him on the senior with Seth Trimble, or do you put him on, to your point, with how Kyan Evans just played? Do you try to disrupt him from a three-point shooting perspective? And this is where it becomes interesting to me. I don't know that Kansas has the guns to be able to keep up in a three-point shooting game. I think they can keep up in a certain sense in a transition game if it's running big men getting dunks, running the floor, Darryn Peterson running the floor. And Peterson can keep up from 3. But right now, Cole Rosario, who I think is eventually going to be a good three-point shooter, he's been a little lit off to a slow start, been a bit uncomfortable. Jaden Dawson, who is expected to come in and play big minutes and shoot a lot of threes, that just hasn't worked out really yet so far, at least for KU. The three-point shooting is a question. And so if those two guys, obviously it could be more people like Bogavac off the bench and stuff, for instance, but those are the two main ones, right? And so for Kansas, can you kind of cut the head off the snake, so to speak, of those two shooting threes and kind of limiting their offense so that you can have kind of a more, equal playing field from the three-point game from your guard position, right? Does Peterson guard Trimble? Does Peterson guard? And that's going to be super interesting to me of how KU can kind of check them. Maybe we even see, because Peterson is, 6'5" with like a 6'10" wingspan. Maybe we even see Cole Rosario guard, Kyan Evans, and we end up seeing Melvin Council on Seth Trimble or vice versa. And then we see Peterson on, potentially Bogavac if he's in at the 3, or Wilson if he is in at the 3, going back to kind of that potential matchup there. So that's kind of the big question for me. And then, can you kind of match up with the jumbo lineup? And then that's where Tiller comes in. So if Tiller has a big game, and I think the other out in this one for really both of us of how, either team wins the game is one of the freshmen just does like a superstar thing, like if Caleb Wilson has 30 points and 12 rebounds, it's hard for me not to say like, okay, Carolina's probably not going to win the game. And on the flip side, like I feel like Darryn Peterson's going to have a 40-point game here at some point. He had 24 in the first half against Louisville in the exhibition game. And then he had some cramp stuff in the second half. He had whatever, it was 21 points in the opener, but he only played 22 minutes against Green Bay. So if Darryn Peterson comes in and scores 40 points, I think Kansas wins the game that way too.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Derek, because to your great point, because of the exhibition games and because both teams played and just with all due respect to Oakland and to Central Arkansas, overmatched teams in the first game. And so, nobody from Carolina played more than 25 minutes in that game. I'm looking back at Kansas because I can't remember. Yeah, no, same thing. Nobody played more than 26 minutes for Kansas. And so I don't think we have a true feel for what are these teams going to actually look like when they have to play a full game, as will happen here in the regular season. Obviously, Kansas played a full game against Louisville. Obviously, Carolina played a full game against BYU, but it's just different, man, when the games start counting. And so I think that heightens the anticipation in some ways of as you're saying, electric things could happen and we don't even know what they're going to be at. I mean, you talked about Caleb Wilson. The dude had 7 dunks on opening night. I'm like, what are we doing here? And so it's those kind of things. Like, what is the crazy unexpected thing that's going to happen?
I think that's more than Jalen Wilson had in his entire KU career. And I don't even know that that's a joke. That might actually be true. That's incredible. Awesome, man. Well, Isaac, where can you find all your great work?
Yeah, brother. As you said earlier, I'm most active social media wise on Twitter at Isaac Schade. Schade has a C in it. It's weird and dumb. As Derek alluded to, for you Kansas fans, I also host Locked On College Basketball. We're coming at you with the national view on things 5 days a week. I live in Joplin, Missouri, for all you Kansas folks. So I'm down here in Jayhawks country as well. Rock chalk. I can get with that, man. Have so much respect for the Kansas program. Every Kansas fan I encounter gets it and understands and reveres the game at a high level. And so that's what, Derek, I think, one of my favorite things about this matchup too, is it's two fan bases that get it and understand the game at a high level. And that makes me so excited for it. Brother, what about you? For the Carolina folks that want to hear more on the Jayhawks side, where can they find your great work?
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's like Kansas and Carolina are more united, and then it's like Kentucky and Duke are evil for the blue blood side.
Legitimately, though, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, you can find me as well at D Johnson Radio on Twitter there. And again, you can find any and all of our shows, Locked on Jayhawks, Locked on Tar Heels, Locked on College Basketball, anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube pages. So make sure you're subscribed to all 3 of those. And we'll see you next time for another edition of Locked On. We'll have some post-game action. For Isaac, I'm Derek Johnson. Thanks for joining us.
Peace.